Welcome, dear subscribers, to a brand new episode of our channel, where we uncover the most fascinating secrets of ancient history. Today, we're embarking on one of the most intriguing and controversial journeys through the Roman Empire into the intimate world of its most powerful and extravagant empresses. If you enjoy discovering the most human and surprising sides of great historical figures who changed the course of Western civilization, then this video was made for you. Before we begin, make yourself comfortable, because what you're about to learn will both astonish and captivate you. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon, because every week we bring you unique content about the most thrilling mysteries of history, the kind you won't find anywhere else. At this time, Mount Vesuvius had just buried Pompeii under tons of volcanic ash. But in Rome, at the very heart of the most powerful empire the known world had ever seen, a woman with almost limitless authority was writing the most scandalous chapters of the imperial court's history. This was no ordinary woman, she was Valeria Messalina, the third wife of Emperor Claudius, whose thirst for pleasure and power made her one of the most controversial and captivating figures of antiquity. Messalina was not your typical empress. Born into one of Rome's most aristocratic families, she displayed a strong character and exceptional political acumen from a young age. But what truly set her apart from other women of her time was her revolutionary approach to sexuality. In a society where women of the upper classes were strictly limited in expressing their desires, Messalina shattered every imaginable boundary, leaving behind a legacy that historians have studied for nearly 2,000 years. If this introduction has gripped you as much as I intended, hit that like button right now, because what comes next will completely change how you see the world of ancient Rome. Messalina's first unusual pleasure was what modern historians call identity games. The empress would often disguise herself as a common woman, donning wigs, blonde or chestnut, and coarse linen tunics, then set out on nightly strolls through the streets of Rome. But her goal wasn't merely to experience the life of the common people. Messalina headed straight for the Subura, the most dangerous and decadent district of the capital, where she mingled with gladiators, mercenaries, foreign merchants, and others who would never dare touch a woman of her status. What made this remarkable was the meticulous way she prepared for these nocturnal escapades. According to Tacitus and Suetonius, she had an entire network of accomplices, loyal slaves, freedwomen skilled in disguise, and even a few young senators who shared her forbidden desires. Each nighttime expedition was planned like a theatrical performance, allowing Messalina to explore sides of her personality completely suppressed during the rigid imperial protocols of the day. These encounters were far from mere casual sexual adventures. For Messalina, this was another form of power, rawer and more authentic than the political authority she wielded in the palace. Surrounded by men who had no idea of her true identity, she relished being desired for who she truly was, not for her title or position. It was a complete reversal of the Roman hierarchy, the most powerful woman in the empire voluntarily becoming an anonymous city dweller in search of thrills. Her second unusual pleasure was what could be called endurance contests. Messalina turned the sexual act into something resembling an extreme sport, the goal being to surpass all known limits of physical stamina. Chronicles wrote that she hosted pleasure marathons, multi-day events involving dozens of men, carefully chosen for their strength and experience. And the most astonishing part, these weren't chaotic orgies but strictly organized events with rules, a hierarchy, and even a jury that kept time. Doctors were present to monitor the participants' health, and scribes recorded every detail for later analysis. Messalina had, in effect, created a science of sexual pleasure. One of the most famous episodes took place during a banquet when she publicly challenged Rome's most celebrated courtesan, famed for her endurance. The contest was simple: from sunset to sunrise, whoever could receive the greatest number of men would win. According to Pliny the Elder, Messalina won by such an overwhelming margin that she set a record which, he claimed, no mortal woman in the empire's history ever managed to break. Her third unusual pleasure could be called the theater of power. In the imperial palace, Messalina would host banquets that at first appeared to be ordinary aristocratic feasts, but at a certain point transformed into elaborate role-playing performances, where the guests became participants in a carefully crafted scenario. In these games, she herself assigned the roles. Some had to play slaves, others captured enemies, and some became goddesses of love. Messalina loved to transform into Venus, while her partners became mere mortals, forced to obey her whims. At the same time, she skillfully blended theatricality with reality. Every action, every word, every gesture was both a performance and a real display of power. Here, she explored the psychological aspect of desire, how a role, costume, and situation could intensify arousal. Her contemporaries wrote that these performances had a dual purpose: to give her pleasure and to test the loyalty of her courtiers. Anyone who refused to participate in her fantasies would automatically fall out of favor, and sometimes even lose their life. Messalina's fourth pleasure was linked to forbidden tastes. She adored hosting banquets where food and sex intertwined in a single act. On enormous tables, alongside exquisite dishes, oysters, figs, game glazed with honey, naked bodies of slaves and concubines were placed, on which the food was served. This play with sensuality and gastronomy was not a simple whim. In Rome, it was believed that certain foods, such as oysters or truffles, had a strong aphrodisiac effect. Messalina used this knowledge to create an atmosphere where smells, tastes, and touches merged into a continuous flow of pleasure. Guests were often drawn into orgies right at the table, while the Empress herself watched as a director, sometimes even joining the act. Her fifth pleasure was perhaps the most dangerous: games with life. Messalina sought thrills in the proximity of danger. Sometimes she chose as her lovers people whom the Senate or even Claudius considered enemies of the state. These were political adventurers, exiled senators, even former conspirators. The point was not only sexual pleasure but also challenging the very system of power. It was as if she was testing how far she could go before her husband or the Senate intervened. This game ended tragically for her. Her affair with Gaius Silius, an influential and ambitious senator, was perceived as a direct threat to Claudius's power. According to Roman law, this was considered not merely adultery but treason against the state. It was this final risk that proved fatal. When Claudius learned of her secret marriage to Silius while she was still his wife, he saw it as a conspiracy. By order of the Praetorians, Messalina was seized and executed without trial. Her body was burned, and her name was attempted to be erased from the memory of Rome. However, as often happens, the forbidden fruit proved the sweetest for history. The more people tried to silence her actions, the more they fueled the imagination of future generations. Messalina became a symbol of female freedom and sexual independence in an era when women were almost entirely deprived of rights. For some, she was a debauched woman; for others, a woman boldly defying the moral and political norms of her time. Even 2,000 years later, she continues to inspire writers, directors, and historians. Some see in her the embodiment of dangerous passion, others a victim of male power, and yet others a clever and courageous woman who wielded the only weapon available to her, her sexuality. Perhaps the truth about Messalina lies somewhere in between. But one thing is clear: her life is a vivid reminder that power and passion have always gone hand in hand, and human desires know neither time nor boundaries. After Messalina's death, Rome seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, yet at the same time, it remained bewildered. Her absence left a void that no one could fill. The city, accustomed to constant rumors, scandals, and leaks from the Imperial palace, suddenly became quieter. But this silence was deceptive. The whispers about Messalina continued to live in the shadows, in bedrooms, and on the streets. The servants who survived the fall of their mistress secretly recounted her former amusements to the new masters. These stories were passed from mouth to mouth, gradually acquiring new details. Some claimed that she had a secret garden of pleasures, hidden deep within the palace, where only the chosen were allowed. There, supposedly, the walls were decorated with erotic frescoes, and the air was filled with the scents of incense and flowers. Others insisted that Messalina kept a diary, a detailed chronicle of her desires, triumphs, and disappointments. It was never found, but rumors of its existence stirred the imagination of the Romans. Some dreamed of reading it for arousal, others to find evidence of her crimes, and still others to understand what truly drove her. Perhaps the most intriguing fact was that even after her death, some influential men of Rome admitted that they still felt attraction toward her. Not to the woman of flesh and blood, but to her image, a daring, free, and boundless figure. For them, Messalina became something of a forbidden myth, an eternal symbol of dangerous desire. Over time, her figure ceased to be merely a scandalous story. She became a cultural archetype, the embodiment of a woman capable of destroying an entire empire with the power of her passion. Her name entered literature, theater, and art. Every artist and writer saw something different in her. Some saw a fatal seductress, others a rebel, still others a victim of circumstances. And perhaps this is the main paradox of Messalina. Her life ended in fear and betrayal, yet she herself remained eternal. She lived in such a way that even her enemies could not erase her from the memory of history. In a world where women were taught to be quiet and obedient, Messalina chose to be loud, vivid, and inconvenient. Today, nearly 2,000 years later, the name Messalina is still spoken with a special tone, a mixture of admiration, condemnation, and secret curiosity. Her image has survived through the centuries, becoming a symbol of female freedom, sexual boldness, and dangerous allure. Historians continue to debate, was she a monster of debauchery, or a victim of hostile chroniclers who could not forgive a woman for wielding too much power in a man's world? There is no definitive answer, but one thing is clear: Messalina knew how to live in a way that even those who hated her could not stop talking about her. In the modern world, her name has become almost proverbial. She is mentioned in books, films, plays, and even songs. Some see in her a warning of what unrestrained lust for pleasure and power can lead to. Others, a symbol that a woman has the right to be free and not obey rules made to limit her. Messalina lived on the edge of power and downfall, love and betrayal, desire and destruction. Perhaps that is why she feels so close to us today. We live in a world where passion and ambition still collide with judgment and envy. Her story is a mirror in which we see both our own fears and our hidden dreams. So was she a criminal, or simply a woman too bold for her time? That is for you to decide. But one thing is certain: Messalina will never disappear from humanity's memory. She will remain an eternal enigma, captivating and dangerous, just as she was in the halls of her imperial palace.